it was a really beautiful way of me saying that is what I can do on my own, with an unbelievable team of contractors around me that I'd built up for many, many, many years, for a wonderful set of people. And there was this moment where I kind of finished this 22-hour shift at the Hilton Deansgate, and I drove down, just kind of shed a few tears, and I was like, that's it. I think that's it.
From Ministry of Work, welcome to Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds podcast, a show about Greater Manchester's pioneers, entrepreneurs and visionaries, and the stories that brought their ideas to life. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and on today's show, Lucy White's journey from the 9th of 11 siblings saw her launch multiple businesses, including forming a key part of the world's largest sibling-owned drinks company. Starting work as an office assistant at just 16, Lucy went on to gain experience working in a law firm, working at a small technology startup, and then latterly joining McDonald's on their fast-track programme to becoming a store manager.
So I am number 9 of 11 siblings, from a family in Salford, West to be specific. And from our parents, Breda and Eric, very sort of the Salfordians that met very young in their lives and in Odsal. And as part of one of the businesses we ran, we used to tell the story quite in detail of how they met on Christmas Eve. So that's a nice story. So they worked very, very hard. These days we'd probably call them entrepreneurs. They would cringe that word. I think they just thought themselves as hardworking individuals from working class background, everybody in the same city, doing the same thing, just working really, really hard. So when we grew up, when I was born 79, so I'm still classed as a 70s baby, only just. Like I say, I was number 9, so I had 7 brothers and 3 sisters, and I was in the kind of the kind of whole chain of the family was I had 2 younger brothers and 3 older brothers. So as one of the girls, I was the youngest girl, and kind of wedged in between quite a few of the boys. Yeah. And my sisters was at the upper end of the family. And so, as a result, I was very, thought I was one of the boys, basically. Yeah. Bit of a tomboy. Yeah. Loved to kind of get rough and tumble, like, lots of fights and things like that. And family life, growing up, I've got fond memories of my childhood. We didn't have much. Like I say, my parents worked very, very hard. We had 2 shops on Liverpool Street and in Salford. One was a sandwich shop and the other one was a DIY shop. My dad was a builder and used to be on site quite a lot. And then one of us would always be manning the DIY shop, whilst my mum was in the sandwich shop and either with a baby in arms or something like that. So that's how kind of my memories of growing up, of our parents just working all the time, Dad being on site all the time, tools like rearing around the house all over the place. And as the family obviously was very much expanding and getting bigger, we lived in a very modest 3-bedroomed end-terraced house in Salford, right alongside the M602 motorway. And
how did that work with?
Well, exactly. Well, at the beginning, we were all kind of shoehorned into this little house. So, 2 triple bunk beds in one bedroom, and another set of bunk beds in another. But my dad being a builder, he then was trying to extend the house whilst we were all growing up, and in the end built practically another house on the back of the house. And we converted the loft into a bedroom, one of the cellar rooms into a bedroom, which we all fought over when one of them moved out. Not bad. And then eventually we ended up with an 8-bedroomed house, and then only a couple of us living there. So and obviously it was a busman's holiday for Dad. He would go out building on sites and then come home and have to continue building. So very much living on a building site whilst growing up. But can you imagine the amount of fun that we had doing that. We were practically, we joke around and say that we were almost feral, kind of running around just in the dirt and kind of.
It was hard. I've got 2 kids, and that's hard enough.
Yeah,
they will have had a tough time.
Exactly. And my mum was amazing. She's a very loving mum, especially whilst we were growing up. So although we didn't have much, there was always plenty of love in the house. My mum was very strong Catholic, and my dad became a Catholic before he and mum got married. And so church was a big deal, and kind of getting ready and putting your Sunday best on every Sunday to go to church together as a family was a really big, day. And it was very much a rest day as well. So yeah, lots of love, lots of work. We didn't necessarily need many friends as siblings because we helped each other. Yeah. And safety in Salford those days was a little bit kind of free and easy, and we could go out and play out, and Mum would send us out and say, don't come back till tea time. And then tea time was just this mission of 2 sittings, kind of like the younger ones would go first, the older ones second. So, but then we learned a lot from that. And in terms of being practical, that's probably where I get where most of us actually get a lot of our practicality from, is that you had to be very, very self-sufficient. I was cooking dinner for 13 people by the time I was 11. Well, and you all had to muck in, and the older siblings practically helped raise the younger ones. And so, we were very much together as a family. But although growing up in Salford, and as Salford changed over the years, and didn't exactly become the safest area, within the whole of Greater Manchester. And my parents always used to kind of say, Salford isn't Manchester, Salford is a city in its own right. And I'll never forget them drumming that into us. It's Salford, Lancashire. Yeah. Until obviously it became Little Salford, Greater Manchester. Yeah. So, but it wasn't necessarily the safest place as time moved on, growing up. And I wouldn't say that we were wrapped in a bubble as a set of siblings, but we were definitely protected quite somewhat from a lot of things that were going on outside around us, and pretty much on our doorstep. But, we lived right in the middle of East, and there was lots of kind of crime and things happening outside of the family home. But Mum and Dad did a very good job at there was a lot of curfews, you had to be in by a certain time and things like that. So, I thank my mum and dad for that now, because, there's a lot of stuff going on outside in Salford that we didn't need to see, and we very much didn't need to be involved in.
Yeah, that's the thing. That would have been easy for us to get involved in potentially.
100%. And there was a real kind of reputational value that our parents kind of instilled into us, is that, when you leave this house, you are upholding the family name as McAvoys. And there was not that many families in Salford that had so many siblings. We were kind of we were part of a group that had, I think there was the Campbells that lived down the road. There were 9 of them. And then the Monaghan's who lived up the road ended up being 17 of them. And so, kind of that very much that 16 and counting kind of program that you see now. So, there wasn't that many. So we were known as a big family, and that brought with it a lot of responsibility.
Sure. Everyone would know, or that spotting you'll be like, that's then from the big family.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. And so we all left that house knowing that we had to kind of just be respectful to family and that was just so I'm very thankful to our parents of that we were instilled with values and morals very early in our age.
And you've also quite crucially observed a really strong work ethic at a young age, which I think has a massive impact, particularly, we'll talk about it shortly, going on to found your own businesses, that seeing that at home is instrumental, I think, in terms of your own work ethic and then hopefully the success that can bring you as well. So from your childhood, obviously very busy childhood, a busy house, how did things like move forward in life? Like, what were your aspirations when you was growing up in that busy environment? Or did you have it? Did you have any ideas what you wanted to be?
I did, yeah. I had lots of different things. I think the difference with them, I don't know whether I was different to my siblings in this way, but I felt like there was just so many things that I wanted to be. Like one week I wanted to be a hairdresser, and the next week I wanted to be a PT in the army, and then the week after that I wanted to be a teacher, and I just kind of had all these. I never really knew what I wanted to be, whereas some of my siblings very much went on a very straight path, and college, school, college, university. And knew kind of what they wanted to be and what they wanted to do. And I was very much kind of like, oh God, there's just so many things that I want to be. And I ended up kind of doing something or trying something out. And then I'd be like, oh, I can do this. This is fine. And then kind of going, oh no, I think I could actually do this instead. So I was always kind of not really sure. High school wasn't a particularly happy time for me. Kind of like I found it quite difficult. Again, going back to that, I was raised in, I wouldn't say overly strict manner, but we were definitely raised with rules and I just when I was at school, we went to a very inner city school with a whole cohort of kind of kids that were all coming from all different walks of life and backgrounds in Salford. And because we were a big family and there was this kind of strictness within the family, and kind of a pressure to be respectful all the time and conform and not break any rules and things. I just felt like I didn't really belong. I just didn't know where my place was at high school. I struggled a little bit. And encountered, like many of us do at school, bullying and things like that. But I always kind of tried to, it was like roll my sleeves back, fists up, but not a fighter, but like I was always like, come on, let's, I can take you. And not in a physical sense, but I'm
to prove.
I can, I'm okay. I can kind of, I'm better than you in that I can win.
Yeah, I'm going to prove myself. I'm going to. Yeah. Did they probably drove you more than it did?
Yeah. But it wasn't a happy time. It was like a survival kind of period. And so I left school kind of thinking, right, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be a PE teacher. I finally settled on something. And then went to De La Salle College, which was right next door to the high school, foolishly in a way, thinking, right, this is a fresh start. Yeah. And I'm going to, I'll be me. We don't have to wear a uniform anymore. It's going to be great. Foolishly and very naively, didn't realise that most of the cohort that I went to the school with all fed up to the same college. So nothing actually changed apart from the fact that you could go to college in your own clothes. And so I just felt then continuously surrounded by people that I wasn't necessarily felt akin with. And I just struggled with that. I loved the subjects. I was, I studied PE and biology and English, and I loved that side of it. And that was one thing I did love about school, is I loved the learning side. I loved learning, and then I wasn't necessarily an academic student. I had to work really hard to pass exams and things like that. But in terms of the learning aspect, I loved that. And so, but then it got to kind of the point at college where I was like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I'm not really feeling like still feel like I'm back where I was, all those years in high school where I had to be there. Whereas in those days, you didn't have to be.
Exactly, because you could not.
And you could decide to not be there and go and get a job, like a lot of other people did. So I'll never forget one Easter break. I just said to my mum, mum, not my dad, because I didn't know how my dad would respond. But I'm not going back. And she said, okay. And didn't really question it. Now, I've looked back and reflected on this quite a bit, because I thought, I wonder if I had a parent that you would have necessarily now in this current sort of generation of parenting and modern parenting, where the parents would sit them down and go, right, well, okay, why would you not want to go back? And what do you want to do? And should we explore other options and things like that? And Mum didn't do any of that with me. Now, I could look back and say, well, that's because she was a neglectful parent or whatever, kind of blame her in some ways. But do you know what? I think the reality was that she's just busy. She was working her socks off, to provide for the family. Sure. And I didn't feel at that point like I kind of was let down or anything like that. So I just was like, right, well, and then within 2 days I had a job.
Wow. Yeah, well, and that's probably a testament to you, isn't it? Because then she's probably didn't need to worry in some respect because you've very resourcefully got out, got a job almost immediately.
Yeah, I did. And I just thought, no, I'm just going to get a job. And then at least mum can't complain. What are you doing? I'm earning some money. I can't just sit around because that's just not me. So I got a job in this company in Salford and walking distance because I couldn't drive. I was 16 and that was kind of an insight then into what the corporate world looked like and the business world. And I was very much at the low. I was at the bottom. You know,
what was it doing?
I was an office administrator for a company called Touchstar Technologies, and they were like they created and manufactured the touchpads and very, you know, like the and right at the beginning of touchscreen technology, and they were putting them into delivery drivers for you know, like DHL and deals like that for deliveries. And so right at the beginning, and I learned a lot there. And it was a really great kind of insight into business, the different departments within business and how they all kind of interacted with each other. They did manufacturing on site. And so I got to see everything from the manufacturing side through to being on the same floor as the CEO and having his door open and being able to kind of listen and hear everything that he was saying. And it was very interesting. I thought it was just great, cool. I was like, wow, this is not college. Oh my God, a million miles away from it. And I'm learning a lot.
You're getting paid to learn.
And I was being paid very kind of, obviously, you know, pennies.
Yeah.
But to me, I was earning nothing before that. So yeah, it was a great insight into what business world looked like.
And how, so you've just gone into that, and that's probably a really good sort of, almost like an apprenticeship in terms of business, learning about what other opportunities there might be out there. Because I know I'm from a working class background, and I think I fell into that trap of thinking I should only be a policeman, a postman, a butcher. So I think that insight at that age was probably hugely impressionable for you to give you some ideas of what else you wanted to do, I guess.
Yeah.
How did that turn into starting your first business?
So I then kind of worked my way up into the accounts department, became an accounts assistant, which is laughable in a sense because my forte is not numbers. So, and I've always been very much kind of happy to raise my hand on that and say that's not my skill set. It's not in numbers. I know enough to get by with business and understand. But there's people out there that do way better than me. But it gave me a really good sort of insight into doing that. And then after that, I kind of moved around a little bit. I worked got a job in a solicitor's firm in Manchester city centre. I was like, wow, in the big city. Again, in the accounts department, loved that. Started to understand, you know, kind of how that all worked and all different kind of aspects of law and things and all the departments, because you get to see all the timesheets. You still had to sit there and input all the timesheets when it was all manual and not digital. And that was really interesting. Did that for a while. And then, I just kind of moved around and did a few different jobs. And I think that's what brings me back. I always kind of look back and think, God, I ended up becoming a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none. You know, I just didn't really kind of have a plan. I just sort of did different things and just applied myself to different things. And I just was very much like, oh, that's a job. I can do that. Yeah. I never really kind of, I just always had this sort of feeling that it was something new that I could then learn, as opposed to looking at it thinking, oh, I've not done that before, so therefore I can't do it. And never, ever had that attitude at all. And then I worked for a company, a small growing company in Salford Keys called Dictation Solutions. They used to sell their handheld dictaphones for kind of solicitors, firms and lawyers and stuff. And it was a tiny company, just two young bosses and me. And I was just this office manager. I did all the admin, did everything really, a bit of an all-rounder. And I learned so much from them, the two of them, and they really nurtured me and looked after me. And it was, I loved it there. But I knew that if I wanted to kind of get on any further, I needed to go and do something a bit more and open my horizons a little bit. And so as a bit of a curveball, one of my siblings was working as a store manager at McDonald's restaurants and there was a trainee program, and it was mainly for graduates, but they also looked at non-grads too, so postgraduate scheme. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll apply. So I got on there, and oh my gosh, what an absolute kind of like acceleration, but also a real change. It was kind of like, wow, the pace of work went from, kind of small office to 100 miles an hour. And I learned a lot from that, and going from kind of a very small kind of, modest turnover company to a blue chip, absolute, $1 billion. The change was so, it was so kind of different for me. But as per usual, I just rolled my sleeves up, got involved, did it. Was sort of surrounded by a lot of graduates that kind of all had degrees, and I didn't have any of that. Didn't even have A levels. Dropped out early, and I only just managed to get 7 GCSEs.
Yeah.
And I loved it, but the culture there within McDonald's at the time was not healthy. I had a very old school. I ended up being a kind of a flagship store in Oldham and in Broadway, and it was very old school management, and there was a lot of screaming and shouting and no nurturing whatsoever. It was really difficult. And although as resilient as I was, there was only so much I kind of was prepared to accept.
Pain knows your worth a little bit as well.
Yeah. And but then there was a few kind of difficult days where you're getting screamed at in front of customers and things like that. So but you go away and you think, right, well, is this what I want? This is not how I want to treat people if I was in that position. And so I've always been very much in that kind of way of thinking that I try and just learn from experiences. And I think maybe I did it then without really realizing that I was doing it. I do it a lot more now in terms of I'm more self-reflective now of experiences. But then I thought, I don't think I did it. I think I just did it. It was a kind of a natural learning process that I did, and without really realizing at the time, it was like, I don't want to be like that. So then I left there, and again, like as I said, we're back to jack of all trades. So right, okay, I don't want to do this. I was second assistant manager in a store and on the management ladder. But do I really want to be running a store? And is this what I really want to do? No, but I've learned so much about business. Again, another layer of knowledge. And so I was like, no, I think I'm going to go back to what my original plan was. And I think I'm going to look to go into teaching again. I've got lots of teachers in my family. So it became, it was like, oh, good fit, family fit and things. So I thought, but I can't do it the degree route because that's kind of, that means me going back to college. So I joined a high school in Salford. In fact, the high school I went to as a learning mentor. And I did that for about 5 years and really loved it. I love working with young people, just empowering them, giving them a sense of worth. And I felt like I had like a connection there with that role. Didn't have passed my GCSE maths whilst I was at school. So whilst I was there, we sat with a load of the students that I worked with as well and got a B. So I thought, right, okay, well, now I can look at doing some sort of trainee program for teaching and kind of go through it as like a different route. And then in the middle of all of that, from a personal perspective, I got married. I got married whilst I was at McDonald's, actually. So I was quite young when I got married. I was 20. I met my husband at the time when I was 17 and kind of thought I was surrounded by lots of siblings that got married quite young and I just thought this is quite normal. So, and me being kind of, old head on young shoulders and a bit headstrong at the time, thought, just going to get better. So I got married at 20, and then whilst I was at school, I had my first son, Harry, at 23. And then at 25, I was pregnant again with my second child, Hannah. So I was on maternity leave then. I'd done about 5 years as a mentor. And this is kind of the start, really. This was the pivot. I'd probably say I've got a few pivotal moments in my life personally that shaped what route I've gone down in terms of my business and my career choices. And this was probably the first one in that during my maternity leave, Hannah was 3 months old and contracted bacterial meningitis. Wow. And it was a really difficult period. I was 25 and had no clue what I was doing. Never, as a wife, never mind a mother, of my second child. I think that was where that bubble got burst of sort of naivety and carefree.
You're thrust into being a grown-up, right?
Yeah. And it was very serious. She got bacterial strain of meningitis. We were on holiday in Cornwall at the time, and it was touch and go. And the doctors basically said, she's critical in the next hour. We'll see whether or not she comes through it. But Hannah, being a bit of a kind of a chip off the old block, so to speak, pushed through. She was a little fighter even at 3 months old, and got well. But we were in hospital for just under 2 weeks in Truro in Cornwall. A lot of family support during that time, which was incredible. And she came through it, and then we kind of got back home, and sort of without the security and the safety net at the hospital, I crumbled quite a bit, which was not. But I think I was in denial for quite a while.
And entitled to when you go to something like that.
Yeah. But I think because we're so young as well, I just didn't really understand me and what I was doing, and I can look back now and see that. But at the time, I was just kind of very confused and found it very, very difficult. So decided not to go back to work for a while because I was struggling to kind of the concept of leaving Hannah with someone. So I just took a bit of time out, and also even it's still a struggle now for current parents, and the cost of childcare and then was still equally as difficult as it is now, and the thought going back to a job that wouldn't have given me much more in terms of earnings once you put 2 children through childcare didn't make sense. So I didn't go back, and so took a bit of time out. And then I was about 18 months in, and I just was like, right, this has been really nice looking after my kids and having all of this time. And Hannah was thriving at that point. I'd addressed quite a lot of issues that I was going through mentally as well. And then I was really just chomping at the bit to do something. And then that was the beginning of my first business.
How did you? Where does the idea come from? So you've been through the mill there at that point. You're still young. You've got 2 kids though. Where does that first idea of, do you know what? I'm going to go and do that, because that's such a interesting moment when anyone decides to start their own business. So where did it come from?
I don't know. Well, actually, I do know that one of my sisters was having a big joint 40th, I want to say. I hope I've got that right.
You've got enough siblings to be allowed to forget.
And she asked me to help. I was really good at planning parties and events and things like that. I just thought it was I just loved it. It was just really fun, didn't kind of see it as burden, didn't really feel the pressure of like planning an event. It just was this like, blind confidence that, I'll do this and this will be amazing. It'll be good. I always had loads of interest. I always had loads of fun ideas. And I was always very much like that growing up. I was just, my dad was really integral in that sense, in that he would always be making stuff, this sort of innovation was just around us all the time.
Yeah. So if you had an idea, you just go, I'll just execute the idea, regardless of how wacky it is.
Yeah, or if I wanted something, like, tangible, I would just go and make it. I just like a toy, or I'd invent things all the time. And so I think that just was part of us growing up as well. It's just around us all the time. And Mum and Dad were very, kind of intuitive and innovative. They would think like, because we didn't have much, so you had to make best of what you had around you. And so my dad would, be inventing so many wacky stuff. Dad was slightly eccentric as well, which helped,
Yeah.
So parties were like really great. I'd just like have all the ideas, and just ideas were always in abundance to me. And so I helped my sister with her party, and I was just like, I could do this. So, but at the time, my kids are still quite young, and I thought, do I want to do it on my own? And so this was the very first time I kind of thought the idea of doing something with someone else. And so when I was in hospital having Hannah, there was a woman in the bed neighbouring to me who had her son the day before me. We both had C-sections. So in those days, they keep you in for a week, but not now. They turf you out kind of within 24 hours. And so I became friends with Debs, and we stayed friends throughout the kids growing up. Hannah was 18 months old, so was her son, Charlie. And so I approached Deb. She was in a similar sort of family circumstances to me, but with 2 other children. And I just said, I've got this idea, and at the end of the day, I've got nothing to lose. I'm not earning any money now. So if I don't earn anything, and so what? It's not worth
a bit of time, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's fine.
And so she was word with her husband, who was very supportive, and that's it. We just were like, right, sod it, let's do it. And so we built this business during nighttime meetings at either her house or my house once the kids had been put to bed over cups of tea and custard creams, and built this business. And we decided to call it Perfection Planner, and we thought, let's do weddings. And so we kind of went into it with a good idea about what we wanted to do. We needed a website. So me being me, we're like, well, can't afford that. We've got no capital to set anything up at all. Didn't even really understand what capital, what capital was now, what it was for and everything. I had no idea. And so I decided to build a website myself. But then that, those days of kind of buying off this peg websites was not a thing.
So hard to build.
Taught myself how to program and code. And, oh my God, things like that. So we built this really basic website, and then launched it in the December of, I can't even remember the year now.
2006.
2006. Thank you. And we just didn't make, we were just like, right, let's see what happens. And within about a week, we got an email from this couple in America, in New Jersey. And we were like, this has got to be a scam. We were like, oh, again.
Literally just throwing up website.
Yeah, and with this bog standard logo that we just literally, it was just so basic. And had no, testimonials, no proof of the work that we've done before. And so they were not a scam. And there were 2 doctors from New Jersey, but she was originally from Cheshire and Congleton, and her parents lived here. And so we had a meeting with their parents, and we were super honest, and we said, we've just set up brand new business. And they said that's okay. And their parents were just these real, honest, full of integrity, lovely, lovely people. And originally from Sri Lanka, and just so kind and gentle. And I think they just got us and, enjoyed our honesty as well.
Yeah.
And they said, right, we want to hire you. And we said, okay, what's the budget for the wedding? And they said £250,000. And we were like, okay, yeah, we can work with that. And so it was
mad first class.
We were like, oh my God, is this real? And so but we had nothing to we had nothing to compare it against, because we've never.
Yeah, that's interesting. So now I'm sort of saying, wow, holy shit, that's unreal. But you guys were probably at the time, taking it in stride because you didn't know any better, right?
Yeah, and we weren't based. We were like, wow, that's a lot of money. We could buy our house with that money, and I was 26 and a bit by this point, and Debs was a couple of years older than me. But we were like, oh my God, okay. Right, well, it's not our money, it's their money. And it all depends on what they want. And we just literally poured our lives into this one job, and didn't even think about, BD and this is what happens after what. It's going to fall out. We just need to like do everything we can to execute this.
But I think in that's so true that your first client, no matter what your business, you have to do that. I think you have to give it your all, and that gets you your first testimonial, everything else that goes with it, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But I think in reflection now, going back, it really taught me what the importance is between client and supplier relationship, and that feeling of being important, and giving them that sense that even though they were technically our only clients, is moving forward, always making every single client feel like they were the only client. And it really gave me an insight into how much more you get from the relationship. That I can say that now with lots of reflection, but at the time I still kind of thought it. I was like, it's really important to make them feel so valued, and that we are consuming everything.
Over deliver.
Yeah, completely. And I think actually kind of that touches on something that I think I've always got within me, is that I'm this. I like to be and you could call it a pleaser, if in some ways, but I like to exceed people's expectations. I think that's just always been within me. So someone gives me a job to do, I'll go away and do it, but I'll always try and do it a little bit better than they expect me to do it. Whether that's because I like the praise from that or not, or the feeling that I've done something well. Maybe there's a sense of that, but I think there's also a sense of the fact that I just don't believe in doing anything half-assed. It just doesn't sit with me.
And it's good foundation for a business, right?
Yeah.
They're going to use you again, or what?
Yeah, exactly. And I kind of feel like I hate not finishing things.
Yeah.
So the fact that I dropped out of college always kind of hurts a little bit. For me, because I don't like leaving things kind of unfinished and undone. And if I start something, a project or making something or whatever, I would always do it to the very end. And so that probably has sat with me for forever, really. But then I've gone on to learn that is a massive experience in my life. And so I'm really good at finishing things and making sure I get it done and do it well. And I do it better than people think I'm going to do it as well. Or at least I like to think that's how I do. So this job was incredible, and it was one of the most proudest pieces of work that I've ever done in my kind of business career. And given that we were just so new to everything, and had a lot of learnings throughout the process as well. But then it set us up to have this platform, and then the next job we got was another 6-figure sum job that just fell into our lap. And so luck, yeah, possibly. But I think you make your luck at the same time, and you're going to put yourself out there.
Great example, because I agree. Like, I think luck plays a part, but you generate, or you put yourself in a position to benefit from that. All those hours you poured into creating that website from scratch, which most people don't have to do it, and then not done it. That's the bit that you put yourself in the position to benefit from the luck, right? Yeah. So without the website, they wouldn't have identified you. You would have had the job. Yeah. So but you put in that graft to get that luck.
Yeah. And to have just something, start with something. It doesn't have to be finished, doesn't have to be polished. It just had to start with something.
Yeah, 7 out of 10 is good enough sometimes to get started.
Yeah, exactly. And so then we just built the company, and we were going along really, really well. And it was a lifestyle business. Yeah. We were both basically wanted to have a company to run, or a business, or some sort of career, whilst also being full-time mums at the same time. And it was enormous privilege to be able to do that and go to my children's assemblies in the morning and not feel like I had to be at a desk. And we worked a lot of nights, and that was just the way it had to be. We never resented any of it. And those 10 years of working with Debs was a real honor. We had a lot of laughs and a lot of packing the car and driving around, and we ended up kind of getting a cohort of business in North Wales. So we spent a lot of time there, and Cheshire was like a bit of a hotspot for us. But we didn't kind of just solely focus on the high-end weddings and things. We did other stuff. We tried our hand at all sorts of stuff, golf days, corporate days. We really kind of just tried to do as many things as we could and learn a lot and not just be budget specific as well. So we did weddings that were on the lower end of the scale from a budget wise. But they were just as equally important as and also they're made of the same components, just different amounts of money to spend. And so it was really kind of great to be agile, to be able to kind of do all these different things, and because we were in control. So working with someone as well, though, was interesting for me. Having
its own challenges.
Yeah, having a business partner that's come from a different walk of life than I had, and it was, so you had to then navigate how you got round disagreements, differences of opinion, and things like that, different appetites to risk. So that was quite interesting during those 10 years.
Yeah, because obviously you run that then as a bit of a lifestyle business. Did there come a point where one of you would take it further? How did it end?
So we suffered a bit of a setback during the 2008-9 kind of financial crisis, and a lot of our corporate clients, and indeed some of our private clients as well, just decided to stop spending money. And so from kind of the sort of the perks of life in events came to a grinding halt. So we were a little bit kind of screwed in a way. So we were like, what are we going to do? So we pivoted slightly and decided to start renting equipment out, whether it's through subcontractors or whatever. And that ended up kind of taking over a little bit. And I think that was kind of the start of the end, even though it ticked us over for quite some years. And was a really good new sort of aspect to the business. Yeah. We could do planning as well as hiring anything out to you. It just took its toll in that, you were setting up events, and we advertised and put ourselves out there as doing anything, to sort of venue decor, to lighting and PA, and we wouldn't necessarily do all those things ourselves. Some of them we would, and some of them we'd outsource and subcontract out. So, it just took its toll where you're kind of on the road, packing the car a lot, or the van, renting car vans, doing jobs in London. And it just got to the point where we just kind of got a bit tired of doing it. So, that really difficult conversation where you pull your business partner in and say, I think we need to have a chat.
Yeah,
it's not a nice thing to do, but it was something that we needed to happen.
Did you both feel the same, do you think?
I instigated the conversation, and yeah, I think once that kind of the relief of my business partner saying, well, actually, yeah, I think we might have reached the end of the road, was a relief, yeah, and then it was how you navigate out of that now. And sadly, it didn't end kind of where we stayed friends, which is an inevitable part of when business is, and business agreements come to an end. There was a feeling that I'd already basically set up another company in events, which wasn't kind of because my business partner didn't want to continue in events. She wanted to do something else. So I took control of my own kind of sort of next step and set up another business in a different name. So it was a new brand. It was a new concept. I wanted to focus more on corporate work, not because that was beginning to rebuild at that point again, and not necessarily private clients, because private clients sat literally the living life out of me. And it was great for a time, but I wanted to kind of do faster turnover, more decisive clients.
As you mature, I think your business goals and ambitions do as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so that kind of left a bit of a bad taste between us, because it was a case of, we ending this journey. We need to end completely and go on to do completely different things. Whereas I was like, well, no, I'm not going to put 10 years of
no, I've still got experience, still fly.
Exactly, into not doing something in a similar vein. So it kind of didn't end well, and that's a real shame. But I've learned a lot from that, and how to sort of maybe handle situations like that maybe a little bit better. But yeah, that was then the start of 9th events. So obviously being the 9th of 11, it was kind of sort of brought a bit of me into it, but it was more kind of angled at the higher end corporate and event, the events sort of world. And this time invested in someone to do, proper logo for things like that. So, and it was great. Did that for another 4 years and really loved it. And it was just me sailing kind of my own ship again, and thought that was kind of the really, really fun. But then in the middle of that, there was another opportunity that then presented itself, and then another door opened to something else.
Yeah, tell us about that.
So our brothers had decided to set up a brewery. Well, I think they're 10 years in now. So 2013, 14? Yeah, 2013. So one of our brothers, Keith, was on he was an engineer, he was on a project in Oslo for about 9 months. Craft beer scene was booming over there, way ahead of Manchester at the time. And he came back and got all the brothers together, kind of going back again to Dad. Dad brewed beer. As well as lots of other things in his life that he made and, created and invented. He's dude, So he was just a beer enthusiast, and we had loads of homemaking brew kits all over the cellar at a family home. And he would never, one wonderful thing about Dad is kind of sometimes as kind of crazy as he was and, and eccentric as he was, he never turned any one of us away. So if whoever wanted to kind of get involved and say, Dad, what are you doing? He'd always show us what to do. But we had to listen. If we tried to kind of run away with it, he'd be like, race ahead. He'd be like, no, come back. And I'd be like, there's a painstaking hours that you had to sit and listen to Dad kind of take us through step by step. But it was really valuable. And so with the beer, the brothers were involved in that. And so Keith came back from Oslo with this kind of light bulb idea and presented it to the rest of his brothers. And they said, let's set up a brewery. So they did. And kind of, again, this kind of, whether it's a family trait, a blind confidence, or...
Of course we can.
Yeah, of course we can. Why not? A lot of my brothers are engineers. Like I said, some of them are teachers. One of my brothers was a professional rugby league player and had a highly achieving career with Bradford Bulls and played for Great Britain as well. So, and we had loads of, one of my other brothers is a computer programmer. So all these skill sets that were within the seven of them.
It's within the family.
Just within the family, kind of, I think we take each other as siblings for granted. Or, even now, and I don't often say this to them, but look at what they've achieved and they've done most of it themselves is quite, impressive. And so all these skills, they pulled the brothers together. They were all in for it. No, they didn't bring in their sisters.
Yeah, what? Why? Or do you not know?
Actually, really, that's the question.
Do you remember it happened at the time, or did you think anything of it?
They kind of didn't tell the sisters initially, but 3 of my sisters were teachers and I was running my events business. So I think maybe they thought, oh, well, the girls probably won't want to be involved in beer. It's beer. Yeah. And so that's possibly the reason why. But if you ever get Keith on the mix.
Well, that's good. Yes. They would have complicated the name, right?
Yeah, 7 brothers.
7 brothers and 1 sister.
Yeah, and the odd sister. So they set this business up and it was amazing. And I was still running 9th events at the time. And then they were going through their first crowdfunding investment run, and they approached me. A couple of them approached me and said, "Would you help us with it?" And I was like, "I've got no idea what this is about." And so I learned, went away, kind of, researched it quite a bit, learned about what they were doing. And they said, we need somebody to help us with kind of generating the crowd, basically. We're going to launch with CrowdCube. And so it was my first kind of little insight into what different types of investments look like. At that point, I've been growing my 2 businesses organically, started them from scratch. Nothing, didn't really pump too much money into it to get the money out of it that we did. And And so I was like, okay, but I could see from a manufacturing side, they couldn't get to the stages that they were trying to achieve with that quite aggressive business plan without funding, and how they were going to be able to achieve that. You know, there were breweries popping up left, right and centre all over the country. It was starting to become quite a saturated market. So I said, well, look, I don't really know how I can help. And they said, well, you do events, you know how to create stuff. This is what we need. We need you to help us just do stuff like that. So I said, well, look, if I'm going to do this, I can't just do it half-assed, like most of the things that are going to do it. So I said, right, okay, I'll do it. So I helped them with their first raise, which was, at the time was big, in my eyes, but it was 100 grand. But now looking back, it's kind of a drop in the ocean, really. But even then, to raise 100 grand for
a lot of money
from being relatively nobodies and unknown, other than, there's that McAvoy family, isn't there? Loads of them, It was like quite a big number in a respect.
Well, it probably sounds less in the context of Seven Brothers being a very established business now.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was just one operation now with a brewery you've never heard of, and they're after 100 grand. It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, and we're going back 10 years ago as well. 2013 probably, I think, we just did it, and I helped them write their video. So I ended up kind of doing their video pitch for them. I was like looking at so many different pitches and what a good pitch looked like, and what a video pitch looked. And at the time, there were sort of real kind of front runners like Camden Town, and obviously the Brewdog had done it. I've done so many times. So we sort of modelled a lot of the things that we did on that. And we threw events and launch parties and just a way in which we could spread the word. And we did it. We got them over the line, and we had the 30-day window to do that within on the CrowdQ platform, and it was really, really interesting. And I loved being a part of it. And it just gave me a little sort of insight into what the world of crowdfunding looked like, and started learning a lot about it. So I then set up a little sideline kind of like 2 ninth events called Crowdfund Creative, because I was like, I could probably kind of do this.
You've done all along, right? So
yeah.
Okay. I could replicate that again for the people.
Yeah, exactly. So I set up Crowdfund Creative as like a separate business, sort of a separate entity, but fed into the night events kind of business and the company umbrella. So I did that and worked with a few of companies, and it was really interesting. Help them sort of, educate them about crowdfunding, and all of a sudden I was no expert, but I was then advising people on what to do. But mainly just like, this is what we did, and it worked. But there are other ways, and I just thought it was amazing, and it opened me up to so many different companies, and the networking kind of circuit grew for me for then. And I was on my own then. It was building nines, and I really wanted to put myself out there into Manchester. I thought, if we're going to really kind of start building my business, my kid's getting a bit older, a little bit older, you're not too old, but a little bit older now. I need to kind of really start putting myself out there in Manchester, and putting myself in and amongst kind of a bigger arena of business-minded people. And so I was doing Crowdfund Creative. They were setting up the brothers. I have nines. I then joined a business accelerator in Manchester, where I met you. And amongst lots of other amazing people. And I was one of the sort of, I've almost felt like one of the older ones there. I mean, we're going back quite a few years now. I'm not that old now, but there was like so many young people there that were just blowing my mind. I just was like, this is amazing. I just loved it. And
real energy.
Yeah, and I just loved like being in and amongst all these interesting people with this like confidence and faith about building something. And it was just right up my street. I just was like, right, this is where I know I love this. And ended up kind of was sort of to build nines. But I think maybe I've just got distracted from building nice. I knew I wanted to build nice, but then I don't know what it was, whether I sort of like I lost a bit of kind of love for it. I was kind of getting quite, I was post 10 years of doing events and trying to build something. It was really tricky to kind of do it in the corporate world. And there was some really big players out there that I was sort of trying to emulate their kind of progress. But then just loved being part of the accelerator and the hub, and loved learning and being in and amongst all these amazing entrepreneurs. And then in the meantime, sort of seeing my brothers set up their business as well. So I was like, I don't know, I feel something. Yeah. And I just thought, do you know what? I can see the way that the brewery's working. It gave me an insight into the business, because I had to learn all the mechanics of it in order to be able to kind of go out and help them with their crowdfunding project. And I thought, oh, God, we could do this. There's something here. And so I thought, well, why don't the four sisters do something together in the same world? It would make an amazing story, and it's bloody exciting, isn't it? You know, this is
something to get you back passionate about something.
About starting something new again. And I just was like, this could be brilliant. So I got my three sisters together, and I said, look, and they were all teachers. All have worked with teaching, forever. Two of them forever. Well, no, actually, I tell a lie. One forever. One was also a nurse, like a high level nurse in a neonatal unit. She moved to teaching. And then the other one was a teacher, but she previously was she was store manager at McDonald's for about a few years, and so had a business management degree. And so I had a bit of insight into that sort of different world. And so astonishingly, they were all up for it. It just was like, okay, amazing. So we all went away, had to think about it, and we said, look, if we're going to do this, let's do it properly. Yeah. And let's not tell the brothers just yet, because
they didn't tell you.
Yeah, they didn't tell us. It wasn't a tit for tat thing. It was more kind of like, if we're going to do it, let's do it properly. Yeah. And let's not go into like this kind of looking like the poor relative.
Yeah, I can imagine you had a sense of that time. You're like, we don't just want to look like we're riding on the coattails of let's treat it properly and go at it properly, because then when we do have the conversation, they're going to take us seriously.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd kind of, and sort of kind of another pivotal moment that relates from a personal experience that kind of started to change things is that I'd gone through a bit of a painful divorce. Yeah. And so there was a lot of kind of going on for me in my head, and I was like suddenly being this single mum and running ninth, but knew I was kind of coming to the end of the road with events and trying like, but I think it's very much a young person's game as well, when you're kind of right in the middle of it and like setting events up and running events and things like that. And I'd kind of was starting to get myself back, right in a really good place, kind of personally as well. So I was like, this is it, this could be great. And, kind of blind faith again, just, we were like, we'll sit around the table, like, well, how do you make...
We like drinking it.
How do you make gin or vodka? And we're like, we don't know. And, but it just didn't seem to... It just didn't seem to stop us. It was just very much like, well, we'll go away and learn, and we'll find out,
The answers are out there.
How did anyone do anything without starting it from nothing? So that kind of, and I don't know, I'd like to think that was within us all. But we did different levels, kind of, and now kind of looking back, I can definitely see that we were all at different, like massively different appetites of risk as well, and so, but yet we did it, and it was just so cool and amazing. So we went away and we're like, right, okay, who's good at what? Decided who was good at the different things and gave ourselves roles and responsibilities, went away, built a business plan, wrote a business plan, proper one. But all this time we hadn't told the brothers what we were doing, like how did we make it, what kind of kit do we need? And then there was one funny story where I'd planned an event many years before for a couple in Manchester, and he was the professor at Manchester Uni, and but he just set up a sideline hustle of distilling rum from grain with a couple of other professors in Manchester in one of the arches, and it was we went over to see his little still. He only had like a 50-litre pot still. And as we were coming out from this fact-finding mission, we bumped into my brother and his wife. And there was three of us, three of the sisters were there. And although we were good at kind of not telling anybody, we're rubbish at lying. So my brother was like, "Oh, hey, what are you doing here?" And we were like, "We were setting up a distillery and we took it to see one." And then he was like, "What?" And that was it. The cat was out the bag and we were like, "Oh, God, we're going to tell them."
How did the brothers react?
Pretty good, positively. I think somewhere...
Were they surprised? Were they not like, why did he come to us? We could have...
Yeah, a little bit. They were like, well, this is cool. I think they were a bit shocked at first and don't think they expected it whatsoever. And it was... but they accepted it pretty well. And once we sat down with them and said, look, this is the plan and we are going to try and grow as organically as we can. But just look at the bigger picture and what actually this...
Such a good story. And everything.
Exactly. But they were a couple of years down the line ahead of us and had, like I say, quite an aggressive business plan and multiple rounds of crowdfunding already in the pipeline in the future, ready to kind of like launch over the next however many years, 5-6 years. And so we didn't want to interfere with that. And equally, for us to be credible, we needed to kind of establish ourselves as a brand within our own right. And so that's what we just did. And we kind of got our heads down. And then so I had this natural kind of then progression then from 9. And I started to just run it down. And I thought, you know what? I could try and kind of keep this going simultaneously whilst I'm building the distillery. My sisters were teaching. They couldn't be there full-time day to day. They were very amazingly involved and did as much as they could and nights and things like that. But I was the one that had the flexibility to be there day to day. And so I started building this other business and just sort of let 9th run. And I thought I could continue it and bring somebody in to then run it and keep it going as a brand. But is my heart in it anymore? And I don't really think it is. I just love that startup phase. I think that's why I loved being in that hub for that time in that period and just being in amongst all of that beginning, starting something from nothing and that kind of the way you had to be resilient and positive and driving forward all the time, get through the bad days. Celebrate the good.
Hit big milestones quite quickly as well. So you get a quite quick reward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I love that sense of achieving and so and then if kind of like you hit a bit of block or a brick wall and it was never a case of like stop and try and turn. It was like, how do I get through that? And just whether we climb over it or we break it down, there's always a way. And so I just set myself to task. And so I allowed 9 to kind of stop. But I kept it there just ticking over in case I needed a bit of a contingency plan personally. And so, I just kind of, and then one of my last big job, I did an Iranian wedding for some wonderful clients in Manchester at the Hilton. And it was almost like, I don't know, it was a really,
sign off.
It was a really beautiful way of me saying that is what I can do on my own with an unbelievable team of contractors around me that I'd built up for many, many, many years for a wonderful set of people. And there was this moment where I kind of finished this 22-hour shift at the Hilton Deansgate and I drove down, I've got goosebumps actually thinking about it. And I was kind of like going to the, the Ring Road Scale to the Mancini way to go back home. And I just kind of shed a few tears and I was like, that's it. I think that's it. But I'd already had the distillery brewing.
Yeah.
Excuse the
not anymore.
And so, but still at that point, I kind of knew it was it, but I let the business run just for the time being and just had it there in the background in case I got any juicy, inquiry.
Yeah, for sure.
Never say no to business and turn things down. So, and then started building the distillery. I just absolutely loved it. It was just totally new, completely out of my comfort zone. Don't know what it is about that. I quite like being out of my comfort zone, I think. And I like being kind of thrust into different things where I get a little bit challenged. And this was very much the case. I mean, we were making a product that people were consuming.
That's cool, isn't it?
And this is like, and then I've got my eldest sister who I absolutely love dearly, and she's like such a low risk taker. She's like, oh God, what are we doing?
Someone dies.
Someone dies. I don't want to kill anybody. And I'm like, don't worry, we're not going to kill anybody. But then by that point, I think I'd got really, really good at finding good people. So pulling in kind of like really good talent and advice. And I just got kind of, I don't know, I just sought people out. And also, I was also got really good at, and this sounds a little bit kind of ruthless, but I didn't do it in a ruthless way. I was a bit more gentle about it. But I got really good at getting rid of people that were not doing anything.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of reflects back to my personal life, where I was going through that rebuild, through that quite painful divorce. And I just thought, what am I doing?
You don't want anything holding you back.
All of these people, I have got my best interests at heart. Not all of them, sorry. Some, a number of people. And I just was like, why am I giving them anything of me? Like, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm just going to start putting kind of a little bit of distance and just kind of stepping back a bit. And so I think I just got more aware of it, I think, in my mind, and through that whole personal sort of rebuilding time and then applying it to the business. So I got really good at finding really good people who gave good advice, and then sifting through those that were just were just wasting my time.
Yeah.
But did it in a, I'm not, I'd like to think that I'm not known for being a bitch within the Manchester circuit. I'm more of a nicer person. Whether that might mean something to me, maybe it does. That I kind of do care a little bit about the way people think about me, of course. And I think that might go back to the reputational feel of the family. Maybe. But yeah, I just we just went into this new business and sort of started surrounding ourselves with good people. We found a really good kind of distiller who was just doing his distilling in his garage at home in Scotland, and he taught us all about the fundamental aspects of how to distill and the chemistry behind it, and it was just fascinating. But that wasn't my forte. So my forte was not to make the stuff. I knew that. And I said to my sisters quite early on, actually, I do not want to know how to make the gin, because I'm the one that's here full time, day to day.
The more important thing is selling it, right?
Yeah, and building the other business aspects. And that's what I'm good at. I think I am. That's where I'm best placed. Yeah. So don't ever show me how to make it, because as soon as you show me, that's it, you'll have me making it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't want to be tied up with that, because then who's going to be doing all the other stuff? And so we made that clear from the beginning. So my two older sisters were very much involved in the making side, and they were so amazing and really like threw themselves outside of that comfort zone massively and without this sounding condescending, because obviously I know my place in the family. I'm the youngest and the baby sister, but I was really proud of like how they responded, and all three of my sisters actually, how we all got involved, and it was amazing to see how we all worked together as a family. But then that brought with it its challenges as well.
Yeah, so it's never plain sailing when you're in business with people. I've got my own experience of that, and I'm sure people who are in business with other people will resonate with that. Like, what sort of challenges did you have? Like, how difficult was it at times?
Really there was really difficult times sometimes. I mean, we could see our brothers doing their thing, and they were coming up against all sorts of. I mean, there's 7 of them. There's 4 of us. And we were women, surely we're better at kind of more equipped to kind of being able to communicate and everything more than 7 men. So they had their way of dealing with disagreements. And which was slightly different to ours as a group of sisters. So I suppose we tried to be, I won't kind of dress it up. There was tears and arguments, disagreements. I suppose we maybe handled it in a more a communicative way, whereas the brothers would be like, maybe kind of storm out, sort of like throw the toys out of the pram, quite literally, and then kind of have a different response. And then they'd go away, simmer. They'd kind of brew, like, let's get an excuse, bare pun, simmer for a while, and then they'd come back and go, right, okay. Job was like days, very kind of business as usual.
Very stereotypical male way of doing it.
Whereas we kind of didn't really want to leave anything undone until we were sorted and we kind of came to some sort of resolution. So we tried to do it the very diplomatic way, a lot of voting, and I think I'm kind of, I can be quite persuasive, I think that I just kind of like, come on, let's try and do this. And
did it affect the business?
I think it prevented the business from growing faster.
Interesting.
I think the different levels of risk appetite brought with it, sometimes a prevention in growth.
And you can totally see,
shall I say delay?
Yeah, and you can totally see that from all angles, can't you? You can see why some of the lesser risk profile wouldn't want to grow too quickly versus someone who's, totally entrepreneurial, wants to see it scale very fast.
Yeah. And we have quite an aggressive plan as well. So we wanted to bring out our 5 core spirit. It's all in gin, by the way. We decided that gin was the first place to start. It was obviously growing massively. We were going through this, what we call ginaissance. All started by that kind of craft industry, spirits industry growing from Sipsmith, changing the whole dynamic back in 2009, I think it was, where craft distilleries could distill a lower volume of liquid, as opposed to the 1,500 litres of liquid at any one time. I mean, no one had stills big enough other than the big players in the industry to do that. So they completely changed the script. And so I think when we set up, there were probably about circa 420 distilleries built in the UK at that one time. So we were part of a small group, but still quite a lot within, all vying for that 4-inch gap in the supermarket shelf, amongst the retailers and all on the back bars of the on-trade bars, restaurants, hotels. And so it was a real kind of dog eat dog. You had your wholesale and distributors out there that were then starting to really hone in on their specialist gins and specialist spirits. And so you had to kind of have something to set you apart. And for us, it was always our story.
Yeah, great story.
And we researched it, actually. I did quite a bit of research into it. And we believed we were the biggest number of direct siblings in the alcohol industry in the world.
Oh, cool.
I actually applied for Guinness Book of World Records.
You really?
No, because they said that there's too many variables to have to kind of to have to work out or something.
Yeah, it's quite, that in itself is like, I can see that's quite a compelling story that would lend itself really well to, 50 years, 100 years, that heritage.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's a lot of within spirits, there's a lot of family tradition, like there's kind of gone through family legacies within spirits, and even now,
the legacy.
Yeah, even now to this day, like a lot of the spirits that we kind of see as household brands are built on family that kind of handing it through the generations. And so anyway, we still held on to the claim anyway, even though it did get endorsed by Guinness Book of World Records. So we tried to use that as kind of the underlying theme that ran through the business. So even though we had that, it was working with your family and going back to those challenges was a really tough one. I thought I knew my siblings like inside and out before I went into business with them. And then you get into business with them and you kind of think, oh, I don't know you at all, And so the risk appetite was a real challenge. I was more of a risk taker because I just was always of the mind of like, well, okay, if we get it wrong, just don't do it again. What's the worst that could happen type of thing.
But you probably had a fallback that maybe your sisters didn't, I guess.
Well, they had tutoring,
they
had something, they had qualifications. And I think in some ways, I often felt like I had more to lose.
Yeah.
Because I'd kind of done a 15-year career in events and hospitality and moving to something completely new. So, but I suppose I didn't really think like that. That wasn't like at the forefront of my mind. But we did have a plan. We launched our 5 core products within the first year. So for some of my less riskier sisters to kind of go with that was amazing. And so they really pushed themselves. But then it starts getting serious. You need your own. And by that point, we'd muscled our way into one of the rooms in the brewery. Because they weren't we thought it was just this room that was just like abandoned, like not being used. And we said, well, can we just borrow that room for a while? Before they could even blink, we were in there already setting up, and it was a great little addition to there. They were opening the brewery as a tap room, and so you had this window that you could see the still, and so there was a real bit buzz and talking point around it. But they were very much doing their thing. We were doing ours. And then it got serious. We needed our own premises. We needed to really start kind of putting our name against, financial commitments. That was those dreaded PGs that come along. That come along with kind of growing a business and putting a lot of stuff on the line. Really, not just your reputation.
Right. That's when it's not just it's mortgages on the line. How then was the line? Families on the line.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, I was a single mum raising 2 amazing kids. And it was tough. It was hard, but I was the one. We all were to a degree, but I was the one kind of going, right, let's push for this, let's push for that. So, from a risk appetite level, I'm definitely in that medium to high band.
Yeah.
And some of my brothers, it's interesting because the dynamic between the brothers is similar. Some of them are low, some of them are really high, higher than me as well. So yes, the challenges kind of would differed between what next step we were going to take, what the next flavour of the gym was going to be, who was going to do what role, why haven't we got that sale? Kind of trying not to finger point, but sort of finger pointing. Why are we not pushing forward in this area? Why are we still doing this? And I think there was a lot of what it probably looking back now, it identified if we had so many gaps. So many gaps within the business. I was concentrating on sales and marketing and also like quite, day-to-day fundamentals of the business, how we package things, box it, everything.
It's time-consuming.
Yeah, but then, am I a salesperson? Am I like a sales specialist? No, not really. I'm good at selling something because I love it and I'm passionate about it, and I think that's a real fundamental part of being.
Well, you think you only use Excel when you're not then also thinking about what the packages should be and everything else.
Yeah, and then we had so many gaps within the manufacturing side. None of us qualified as such, and I don't believe that you have to be qualified. By the way, I do very much and admire people that have gone out, got those qualifications and achieved amazing, great things in their career through that process of, being qualified. But I don't always think you have to have them either. I think a lot of it comes with experience and working in
the belligerence.
Yeah, exactly. And so, there was just all sorts of disagreements and challenges that sadly a lot of it boiled down to financial restraint.
Yeah,
I think, and I think that's where a lot of businesses find it difficult to grow.
So what effect did that have on the business?
So it meant that we were with the gaps of resources that we needed in terms of good people were not filled, and so we kept kind of plodding on and kind of trying to work through them and plug those gaps ourselves. I think the biggest difficulty was when we hired all four sisters, decided that the time is now to all come on board full time. And that's probably one of the bigger mistakes that we made, in that we should have all actually said, nah, step back, and we hire people that are better than us, and really kind of bring in the people that are going to take us to that next step. And you can also then have that almost that kind of faith in someone else, that that if you've brought the right person on board.
And it would have protected the relationship a bit.
Yeah, I actually...
Because you could have been a bit like a united front.
Yes.
Not against us employees, obviously, but it would have united you all in a common purpose rather than that sort of finger pointing, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So it was a difficult time, but equally, none of it's kind of like, business isn't rosy.
No, it never is.
It's tricky. It's hard. So,
what did that do to business ultimately? So
we always kind of had a plan. The brothers were quite a few years ahead of us. They were growing significantly. Their investment through crowdfunding, I think they've done 4 raises now altogether, raised over 2 million in total. They've grown from strength to strength. And so we went down the road of trying to find an investor as well, because we knew we got to that point in the road where we can't go any further than what we're doing now. And we had some really good deals. We were in some supermarkets. We'd got some really good distributors, had really good deals with lots of on-trade and things. So it was going okay, but we hadn't even scratched the surface really with what we had. And we just had a really good brand and, a lot of integrity as well within the brands. So that was good. So we decided we're going to try and kind of merge. The brothers always knew that there was going to be some sort of distillery to their business at some point. And so I think they basically wanted to wait for us to get, an established sort of like get our side of running it right. Yeah, exactly. And so we started kind of looking at how we could bring the two businesses together. So that's been a bit of a process. It's been a bit tricky, a bit kind of ups and downs. We were initially going to do an M&A and then we tried a few other different avenues. In the end, the distillery has now become part of the brewery, but maybe not in the first sort of plan A that we wanted it to be. Can't talk too much about that, but we always knew that we were going to bring them together at some point. And so now the distillery is part of the brewery, and there's a whole new concept being, kind of on the horizon of Seven Brothers Distillery and Seven Brothers Spirits, which is so amazing. And although we've decided to not continue with the brand of Four Sisters at the current, moment and states, I'm so okay with it.
And it's weird, isn't it? Because it might not have been executed. The plan wasn't executed how you might have wished, and it might not have sort of ended how we wished, but the legacy still lives on. Does that sound?
Yeah, and I just kind of I always look back at something as my first planning and event planning company was a success. My second one was a success. My crowdfunding venture was a success. Just because they're not continuing anymore, kind of running anymore.
Sometimes they do come to a natural
end. And I just look back at all of the things that I've done as successful, because what? How else are you gonna?
Should be proud of yourself.
Look at it, and I look at the distillery as a huge success. You had 4 female, all female entrepreneurs who
didn't know how to do it.
Didn't know how to do anything. All from Salford, all coming from a working class, salt of the earth family, and who all 4 said, "Fuck it, let's do this." And I'm so proud of my sisters and myself and my family that we get to say that. We had our products on the shelves in booze, supermarkets, and that's just cool. It's just, I don't want to look back at anything and think that it's not been a success. And I'm so proud of my brothers for what they're doing, despite so many, challenges and adversity, especially in the current climate economically. It's so bloody hard. But I look back at it as a success, and I'm still very much part of the family business. Just because you're not in the day to day, you're not just, you're still kind of connected by blood and heritage and our upbringing and everything. So it onwards and upwards. It's very much to keep growing the business and keep going, and the amount of information and kind of hurdles that we've got over the last 8 years with the distillery is going to stand the brothers in very good stead, because we've made a shitload of mistakes that they won't necessarily need to make in the distillery world. They've got their own mistakes, obviously, within alcohol manufacturing and things, and they understand other aspects of it, but they've not done the distilling side before. And we have SALSA level accreditation, which is really hard work to achieve, and so we've got a huge. There was a huge amount of work and foundational work and more that's been done, and that sets up the distilling side within the Seven Brothers so much better and stronger than if they were to start it now from nothing. So.
That's Lucy White, one part of Four Sisters Distillery, which now forms part of Seven Brothers Brewery, where Lucy fondly, albeit not officially recognised by the Guinness World Book of Records, as the largest sibling-owned drinks company. Lucy is a born entrepreneur with successful businesses in both the drinks and hospitality sectors. She has now set up Enectis, specialising in international headhunting for drinks, manufacturing and financial services. What an amazing journey. Thank you so much for listening to the show this week, and please make sure to click the follow button on your podcast app so you never miss a new episode of the show. And don't forget to check out our exclusive work club here at Ministry of Work, built for ambitious founders and business leaders. This episode was produced, recorded and edited right here at Ministry of Work, with a special thanks to our studio manager Dan Brown and, of course, to you for listening. I'm Eddie Whittingham, and this has been Greater Manchester's Greatest Minds.